units inflicted the terrorists the surrounding of Kassab town in Latakia heavy losses. Syria calls on the Security Council to move and stop the Saudi regime from supporting terrorism. From Tripoli to Beirut, the gangs of the future trend moves its terror in an attack against the Arab Trend Party and wounds 11 citizens. Good afternoon. Welcome to our news bulletin. I'm Dania Nizam. An official source in the Foreign and Expatriates Ministry said that the unprecedented and unjustified military aggression carried out by the Turkish government against the sovereignty and territorial integrity of the Syrian Arab Republic in Kassab town on the borders during the last 2 days of Friday and Saturday reflects the actual Turkish government's involvement in what is going on in Syria since the beginning of the crisis and until now. It also reflects Erdogan's bankruptcy in tackling the needs of the Turkish people, who reject the aggressive policies towards Syria and refuses Erdogan's corruption. As the Turkish people expressed their rejection with demonstrations against Erdogan and demanded the departure of his regime. The Syrian Arab Army eliminated a number of terrorists, some of whom hold the Saudi nationality, in several operations carried out in al-Qabir, Beit al-Shuru, al-Farana Reserve, al-Shahrura and Khan al-Juz villages in the northern countryside of Latakia Governorate. Among the killed terrorists were a Saudi called Abu Islam al-Tamimi, the leader of the so-called Ansar al-Sham, Aham al-Sharaqi, the leader of the Jabhat al-Nusra, the Lebanese Maroun al-Majzoub, Abu al-Walid al-Ansari, Abu Abdullah al-Turki, Isam Zaidan, Abdullah Sufi and Muhammad Majbour. The Syrian Arab Army destroyed a missiles and ammunition warehouse, 4 vehicles carrying heavy machine guns, ammunition, explosive devices and 4 mortar launching pads. Foreign and Expatriates Ministry said that the Saudi regime has not taken genuine measures to stop instigation of terrorism in Syria, which calls into question the credibility of the laws it issued in this regard. In 2 identical letters addressed to the United Nations Secretary General and President of the UN Security Council on the Saudi regime's subversive role in Syria, the ministry referred to a raft of counter-terrorism legislations issued by the Saudi regime in a make-believe attempt to convince the international community of its genuine involvement in a counter-terrorism drive. The Saudi regime thinks that its $100 million contribution to finance the United Nations Counter-Terrorism Center will absolve it of legal and ethical responsibility for the loss of thousands of lives and will cover up millions of dollars it pumped to support terrorist groups in Syria and elsewhere in the world, said the letters. The letters indicated that combating terrorism requires that words match actions. Consequently, the Saudi regime, by not taking real measures to stop instigation of terrorism and deter the fitna mongers who issued calls for jihad in Syria and elsewhere in the world in answer to the call of al-Qaeda leader Aham Zawahiri in October 2013, revealed these laws to be grossly lacking credibility. The ministry pointed out that the Saudi regime continues to spread Wahhabi thought, which underpins the crimes committed by terrorists in Syria where the danger lies. It is therefore not odd that thousands of Saudis, including university professors, doctors, engineers and employees, have embraced the al-Qaeda-linked Wahhabi thought due to the regime's efforts to foster it in society. The ministry said that the blinded by mass media and social networks awash with Wahhabi indoctrination, those people have taken their leave from their families, lives and future to come to Syria to kill with impunity under what they call jihad. The ministry added that jihad is the fruit of political fatwas with a religious facade that are so detached from the teachings and values of Islam and a confirmation of the Saudi involvement of supporting terrorism. The ministry said that Syria will supply the United Nations Security Council and the relevant counter-terrorism committees with the ideas of 228 Saudi terrorists who got killed in Syria. The letters dismiss Saudi vows to punish those involved in combat operations in Syria upon their return as cheap media propaganda that ought to be replaced by real measures. As it submits these information to the United Nations Security Council, the Syrian government expects it to take the necessary deterrent measures against the Saudi regime to oblige it into giving up instigation of terrorism, according to its resolution number 1267 issued in 1999, 1373 in 2001, 1624 in 2005, and 1989 in 2011. The ministry concluded by calling on the UNSC to adopt the letter as one of the official documents of the UN Security Council and the UN General Assembly. The participated took to the streets supporting the army's victories and celebrating the liberation of al-Zahra and al-Husn towns from the armed terrorist groups. The participants chanted national slogans in an outpouring of patriotic feelings, praising the Syrian Arab army's victories on the battlefield. Health Minister Saad Naif stressed hospitals of Homs province will be provided with advanced medical equipment. Inspecting the health institutions in Homs province, Mr. Naif pointed out that the ministry is exerting enormous efforts to provide Homs province with all medical needs, and it is working to ease the difficulties hampering the health sector due to the sabotage caused by the armed terrorist groups. The minister noted that the victories of the Syrian Arab Army will speed up the process of reconstruction in all aspects of life, particularly the health infrastructure. Ministry of State for the National Reconciliation Affairs Dr. Ali Haider called on all the Syrians to be aware of the systematic incitements practiced by Syria's enemies to sow division among the people. During his meeting with displaced families from the town of Man who took refuge in the town of Salhab and Hama countryside, Dr. Haider asserted that the national fabrication has foiled all incitement attempts, adding that the government is responsible and keen to free those who were kidnapped, pushing forward in the reconciliation process. Minister of Social Affairs Kinder Shamat said humanitarian aid convoys are planned to set off to Deir Ezzor in a matter of days as the governorate has been under months-long siege by terrorist groups. Meeting the relief subcommittee in the province, Al-Shamat stressed the importance of coordination between charities and government bodies and working according to accurate databases to ensure that humanitarian aid gets to those in need. 250 wheelchairs and an ambulance will be sent to the Red Crescent branch in the governorate, she said. The minister stressed the importance of invigorating psychological and social support programs and tackling the negative psychological effects of war on women and children. She stressed during her meeting with the Red Crescent Board of Directors the importance of expanding its work through increasing the number of aid distribution centers and establishing new medical centers. During a ceremony to honor mothers of martyrs and wounded citizens in Deir Ezzor, Shamat underscored the role of mothers in spreading amity and tolerance in society. A convoy of trucks carrying humanitarian aid provided by the World Food Programme entered Hasaka province through Nasibin crossing point on the Syrian-Turkish borders. The Syrian Arab Red Crescent branch and charities in Qamishli city received the shipment, which will be distributed among people affected by terrorism. Hasaka Governor Mohammed Zal Ali said that the government ensured that the crossing point is ready to permit the entry of only relief aid provided by international organizations as per agreements with the Syrian government. Lebanon, Lebanese security forces in al-Nabatiyah foiled an attempt to smuggle arms with the aim of making them reach the terrorist groups in Syria. The security forces were able to arrest a network of 4 Lebanese specialized in smuggling arms into the armed groups in Syria. Large amounts of weapons were seized with them, including light machine guns and different kinds of ammunition and grenades. Cautious calm prevailed in the vicinity of the sports city in Beirut as Lebanese army units were deployed following the attacks by militias from al-Mustaqbal current and other extremists from the Lebanese Arab current in the western neighborhood. Along al-Jdeida Road, the Lebanese National News Agency reported that several injuries were the result of the attacks, which were renewed this morning as a huge fire broke out, and the sounds of shells and machine guns were sporadically heard in different parts of Beirut's suburbs. Other sources said that 1 man was killed and 11 others were injured. During his meeting with a delegation of Russian students, Minister of Justice Dr. Najm Ahmed underlined the necessity of boosting cooperation in the domain of legal studies and exchanging expertise with the Russian ministries and universities. For his part, Director of Public Relations at the University of Synergy, Michael Kodinov, said that the aim of the visit is to study the possibilities of opening several branches for his university in Damascus, focusing on the specializations needed in Syria. Meanwhile, Minister of Tourism Deir Ezzor met the Russian delegation, underlining the importance of the Russian stance in restoring balance in the world. Minister Deir Ezzor reviewed the damages inflicted on the tourism sector as a result of the crisis in Syria, referring to the facilitations provided by the government to the Russian investors in the domain of tourism. For his part, head of the Russian students delegation asserted that his delegation will positively convey the encouraging atmosphere for the investment in the field of tourism in Syria, which is home to the most ancient civilizations in the world. Under the title Fighting Trafficking in Persons and Mechanisms of Prevention, a workshop was held by the Ministry of Interior in cooperation with several ministries concerned at Umayyad Hotel in Damascus. Participants in the workshop discussed means of exerting national efforts to fight trafficking in persons on both the national and regional levels, especially under the current circumstances, which constitute a fertile ground for the spread of this kind of crime. Lecturers pointed out that Syria was one of the first countries which focused on pursuing the gangs involved in this kind of crime, who are led by international networks. Participants also referred to the spread of trafficking in persons in the refugee camps which were set up outside Syria, asserting that the governments of those regional countries hold the utmost responsibility for this crime against humanity, especially when most of those governments have signed international agreements relating to combating trafficking in persons. The workshop is part of the humanitarian response plan signed between the Syrian government and the UN humanitarian organizations working in Syria. With this, we end the news for today. Thank you for watching us. For more details about Syria and the region, you can always view this bulletin again on syriaonline.sy. Thank you for watching once again. After the break, it's Wadi with our economic and business news. God bless you.